Ever feel like you're building an ethical fortress, like brick by brick?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like to build a company's compliance program, you know?
Right.
And the foundation of that fortress,
Yeah,
it's got to be policies and procedures, right?
absolutely.
So today we're driving deep, deep, deep into those essential building blocks.
And, it's so interesting to me how these documents, they're often seen as like so dry, technical,
Oh, yeah.
but they really have such a huge impact on a company's success.
I agree.
It goes way beyond like just avoiding legal problems, right?
Right.
We're talking about building trust
Uh-huh.
with employees, customers, the public.
Yeah. It's like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right?
Exactly.
But, gotta admit, I've seen some policies out there, in my own life.
Oh, yeah.
They were so convoluted, so confusing. I just gave up.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, who wants to wade through pages and pages of legalese?
Nobody. And that's one of the biggest mistakes companies make. They craft these policies that sound like they were written by lawyers, for lawyers. And like, take, for example, that recent case
Okay, yeah.
with the rideshare company. Their policy on driver background checks was so dense
Right.
and confusing that it actually created loopholes.
Oh.
And that put passengers at risk.
So, okay, let's talk about how to get it right then.
Yeah, sure.
What are the key principles
Yeah.
for crafting policies that actually work, that people will actually read?
Clarity. Clarity is just paramount.
Okay.
Imagine you're explaining a policy
Right.
to a brand new employee on their first day.
Mm-hmm.
Would they understand it?
Yeah.
If not, simplify it.
Okay, makes sense.
Keep it concise, get to the point.
So no more War and Peace length documents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nobody wants a novel when a short story will do.
Got it. What else?
Tailoring. Tailoring's key.
Okay.
A cookie cutter approach just won't cut it.
Right.
The policies need to be specific to the company's industry, its size, the unique risks it faces.
Uh-huh.
For example, think about a small tech startup.
Okay.
They're going to have very different data security concerns than a multinational bank.
Makes sense. But how do you actually translate these, high-level principles into actual guidelines?
Well, think of it like this. Policies set the what,
Okay.
and procedures define the how.
Okay, I like that.
Let's say your company has a policy on data privacy.
Uh-huh.
The procedure would outline, like, the specific steps
Right.
that employees have to take
Yep.
to make sure that policy is followed. Things like password protocols, data encryption, secure storage practices, all
So
that.
it's like the policy is the blueprint
Yeah,
and the procedure is the step-by-step, instruction manual.
precisely.
I like that.
And just like with those instruction manuals,
Yeah.
you got to test for practicality.
Right.
You need to make sure that those procedures actually work in the real world, that they don't, create unnecessary bottlenecks
Uh-huh.
or slow down productivity.
Yeah, because a policy is only as good as its implementation.
Hmm.
What happens when those procedures are poorly designed? Any examples come to mind?
Well, I remember this one situation. A manufacturing company
Okay.
had a safety policy requiring employees to wear, protective gear.
Yeah, makes sense.
Sounds good in theory, right?
Sure.
But their procedure for actually obtaining that gear,
Yeah.
it was so cumbersome, so time-consuming.
Oh, no.
Workers would often just skip it altogether.
Oh, wow.
And that led to, an increase in workplace accidents.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how a good intention can backfire
Exactly.
if the procedures aren't well thought out.
And that's why employee input is so crucial. The people on the front lines,
Yeah.
they often have the best insights into what works, what doesn't, involving them in that drafting process.
Yeah.
It can make a huge difference in creating procedures that are both effective and practical.
So it's about tapping into that, collective wisdom.
Yeah, exactly.
But I imagine, even with the best policies and procedures in place, there are still pitfalls, right?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the most common is overcomplication.
Okay.
Just because a process is complex doesn't mean the procedure explaining it needs to be too.
Right.
Remember, simplicity is key. If it's too hard to understand, it's not going to be followed.
It's like that old KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid.
Exactly. And another common mistake is neglecting communication.
Right.
You can have the most brilliant policies and procedures, but if nobody knows about them, nobody understands them.
They're useless.
They're useless.
It's like having, a secret recipe locked away in a vault.
Right.
What good is it?
Exactly. Communication needs to be ongoing,
Mhm.
multifaceted,
Right.
engaging.
Okay.
Use different channels, right? Email, internet, even like those short animated videos
Okay. Oh, yeah.
that everyone loves these days.
Yeah, everyone loves those. The key is to make compliance relatable
Yes, exactly.
and relevant to people's everyday work.
Absolutely.
So instead of just burying those policies in like a dusty handbook,
Right, right.
make them come alive.
Exactly. And don't forget about feedback.
Oh, right.
You got to create those channels
Yeah.
where employees can ask questions,
Uh-huh.
voice concerns,
Right.
maybe even offer suggestions for improvement.
It's about fostering like a culture of open dialogue
Yes,
where compliance is seen as a collaborative effort,
exactly.
not just like a top-down mandate.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another crucial aspect of compliance: leadership.
Okay, yeah.
If those at the top aren't walking the talk,
Yeah.
nobody else will.
Right. It's like that saying, actions speak louder than words. But it's not just about setting the example, though, is it?
No, it's about actively promoting a culture of compliance. It's about recognizing, rewarding ethical behavior, holding people accountable when there are violations,
Mm-hmm.
and making it crystal clear that compliance isn't just a box to check.
Right.
It's a core value that drives everything that the company does.
So it's about weaving compliance into the very like fabric of the organization.
Yes,
Making it part of the company's DNA.
exactly. And that brings us to another key element of compliance toolkits: training.
Oh, yeah, training.
But you know what? I think that deserves its own dedicated segment.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We've laid the groundwork.
We have.
But now it's time to like delve into the nitty-gritty of how to bring those policies and procedures to life
Sure.
through effective training.
Exactly.
So we'll be right back
Sounds good.
after a quick break to tackle training head on.
I'm ready.
All right, so we're back and ready to tackle training. Now, I gotta confess, when I hear the word training, my mind kind of flashes back to like those stuffy corporate videos from the 90s.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Like those grainy videos with
Yeah.
that monotone narrator.
Yeah, yeah.
And those like cheesy reenactments.
Yes.
Definitely not the most engaging way to learn about compliance.
No, definitely not. So how do we make training something that, employees actually look forward to, or at least like don't dread?
Well, I think the key is to think outside the box.
Okay.
Instead of, just bombarding people with information.
Right.
You got to create an experience.
Okay.
Think like interactive workshops,
Uh-huh.
simulations, even gamification.
Gamification. Like turning compliance training into a game.
Exactly.
That actually sounds kind of fun.
It is. It's about tapping into, people's natural desire
Yeah.
to learn, to compete, to achieve.
Right.
And when you make it fun, people are more likely to remember the information.
Right, because who wants to sit through a boring lecture
Nobody.
when you could be like playing a game
Yeah.
and like earning rewards and stuff, right?
All right.
But how do you actually design training that's both engaging but also effective?
Well, you got to start by understanding your audience.
Okay. Yeah.
Who are you training?
Right.
What are their roles, their responsibilities?
Yeah.
What are their learning styles?
Mm-hmm.
Once you have a good grasp of that,
Yeah.
then you can start tailoring the training to their specific needs.
So it's not just like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
You need to like customize it
Yeah. To
different departments, job functions.
precisely. And it's not just about delivering information. It's about developing skills,
Okay.
role-playing exercises, case studies, real-world scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
These can help employees learn
Right.
how to actually apply compliance principles
Right.
in practical situations.
So instead of just telling people what the rules are,
Right.
you're giving them the tools
Yeah,
and the confidence to actually follow them.
exactly. And another crucial aspect of training is reinforcement. Okay. It's not enough to just like train people once
Right.
and expect them to remember everything forever.
Yeah, of course not.
You got to provide ongoing support, refreshers.
So like having periodic quizzes
Yeah, that's a good one.
or even like micro-learning modules that employees can like access on demand.
Those are great ideas. And you can use technology to your advantage, too.
Oh, for sure.
There are some amazing online training platforms
Yeah.
that let you track progress, personalize learning paths, even give like real-time feedback.
Wow. Technology's really changed how we approach training, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And the best part, it makes compliance training more accessible, more convenient for everybody.
Yeah.
But even with the best training programs,
Yeah.
there's still that challenge of monitoring and enforcement.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about like knowing the rules, it's about following them. Right.
Absolutely.
So how do companies make sure that their compliance programs are actually being implemented effectively?
That's where a really robust monitoring and enforcement system comes in.
Okay.
This involves like a combination of different tools and techniques, like
Hmm.
audits, data analysis, whistleblower hotlines, things like that.
So it's about having multiple layers of like oversight
Yeah,
to make sure everything's running smoothly.
exactly. And it's not just about, catching people doing something wrong. It's also about identifying areas where the program might be falling short
Uh-huh.
or where additional training or support is needed.
So it's about continuous improvement, right?
Yes,
Constantly looking for ways to make the program better.
precisely. And this is where documentation is so important.
Okay.
Having a clear paper trail of all of the policies, procedures, training records, enforcement actions,
Right.
it's so essential to demonstrate that your program is robust
Uh-huh.
and that you're taking the right steps to prevent and detect violations.
So it's not just about doing the right things.
Right.
It's also about being able to prove you're doing them.
Absolutely. Thorough documentation.
Yeah.
That can protect your company.
Right.
In the event of like an audit or an investigation, it can also help you identify trends, areas for improvement. But, even with all the policies, procedures, training, monitoring, there's one essential element
Okay.
that can really make or break a compliance program.
I have a feeling you're about to say culture.
You got it.
We've kind of touched on it throughout this deep dive, but I'm sensing there's more to it than just like a buzzword.
Oh, absolutely. Culture is like the heart and soul of compliance.
Okay.
It's about creating an environment where ethical behavior isn't just expected,
Uh-huh.
it's ingrained in everything the organization does.
So it's not just about like following the rules because you have to.
Right.
It's about wanting to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And building that strong culture of compliance,
Yeah.
it takes more than just issuing a code of conduct
Right.
and hoping for the best. It requires a really conscious effort
Yeah.
from everyone, from the top down.
Right. It's about leadership setting the tone. Employees feeling empowered to like speak up
Yes, yes.
and like a shared understanding that compliance is everyone's responsibility.
Precisely. And when you have that kind of culture, compliance becomes less about checking boxes
Yeah.
and more about living your values. But I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
Yeah, we have.
Maybe we did pause here, pick up the discussion in our final segment.
I think that's a good idea. We'll be right back after a quick break to explore how all these elements come together
Sounds good.
to create a truly effective compliance toolkit. We're back, ready for the final stretch of our deep dive into compliance toolkits.
It's really striking how everything we've talked about, from the policies, the training, the culture,
Yeah.
it all circles back to this idea of building a strong ethical foundation.
It really does. It's like, constructing a building. You
Yeah.
need that solid foundation
Yeah.
to support everything else. And just like a building has to adapt to withstand changing conditions,
Right.
a compliance program also needs to evolve with the times.
That's a good point. Speaking of adapting, we talked about tailoring earlier,
Uh-huh.
but I think it's worth really hitting that point home again. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all compliance toolkit.
Definitely not. Every organization, it has its own unique, I guess you could say, fingerprint, right?
Yeah.
Its industry, size, the culture, even its location, geographically. All these factors, they shape the compliance landscape.
Right.
For example, imagine a global company, right?
Yeah.
Operating in a bunch of different countries, different jurisdictions.
Yeah.
They're going to face a way more complex regulatory environment
Oh, for sure.
than like a small local business.
Right. And even within the same industry, companies can have totally different risk profiles.
Absolutely.
Like you think about a tech startup
Yeah.
handling all this sensitive user data.
Their priorities are going to be different
For sure.
than, say, a manufacturing company focused on workplace safety.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to do a really thorough risk assessment.
Okay.
Before you even think about building your compliance toolkit,
Right.
you have to understand, where are your vulnerabilities?
Uh-huh.
What are your legal obligations? What do your stakeholders expect?
So it's like taking inventory
Yeah,
of your like ethical assets and liabilities, right?
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then once you have that clear picture
Yeah.
of what your compliance needs actually are, you can start assembling the right tools.
Okay.
And that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Building a compliance toolkit, it's not just about checking those boxes.
Right.
It's about coming up with creative solutions
Mm.
that actually work
Uh-huh.
for your organization. Thinking outside that traditional compliance framework,
Okay.
finding innovative approaches that resonate with your employees
Yeah.
and really align with your company's values.
So it's not just about like mitigating risk.
Right.
It's about finding ways to make compliance like a competitive advantage.
Precisely. A strong compliance program. It can boost your reputation,
Uh-huh.
build trust with customers,
Yeah.
even help attract amazing talent. It shows,
Right.
that your company's committed to doing business the right way. And that's a really powerful statement.
It really is. It's like that saying, integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And in the world we live in now,
Right.
with so much focus on transparency, accountability, the companies that prioritize ethics, those are the ones that'll win in the long run.
Absolutely. And that, brings us right back to culture.
Culture, yeah.
You can have policies and procedures all day long,
Yeah.
but if you don't have the right culture,
Yeah, it's not going to stick.
it's not enough. You have
Yeah.
to create that environment
Right.
where compliance is it's part of who you are.
It's part of the DNA.
Exactly. But building that kind of culture,
Yeah.
it takes time.
It does.
It takes effort. It's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
Right. It's an ongoing journey.
You need consistent communication. You need ethical leaders.
Yeah.
And a real willingness to learn and adapt. And you have to remember, compliance isn't like a destination you arrive at.
Mm.
It's a process of continuous improvement.
So it's about always evaluating,
Yeah,
looking for ways to make things better, adjusting as you go.
exactly. And it's also about, celebrating the wins.
Oh, yeah.
Recognizing the people who are really going above and beyond
Right.
to uphold those ethical standards, creating that positive feedback loop
Absolutely.
that reinforces how important compliance really is.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, but I think the most important thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive is
Yeah.
building a compliance toolkit. It's not about creating some rigid, inflexible system.
Right.
It's about building a framework that's strong, yes, but also adaptable,
Uh-huh.
one that can grow with your organization, with the world around us.
I couldn't agree more. And, don't forget, you're not alone in this.
Oh, yeah, good point.
There are so many resources out there.
Right.
Professional organizations, consultants, online tools, all kinds of stuff. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, good advice.
Get some guidance, get some support.
Absolutely. And of course, there's always the deep dive
Of course.
to keep you company as you navigate this wild world of compliance. Thank you so much for joining us today, and a huge thanks to our expert for sharing all this valuable insight.
My pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay compliant.